I mean, what I actually called the stream was finding out what modern women really want from men, which is a very broad question. But in a single sentence, what do modern women want from men? Is the answer everything, or what do you what are your initial thoughts?
Well, I mean, first of all, that's a really good question, because I think a lot of women are very confused at the moment about what they actually want, because we used to think that we just wanted sort of stability,
yeah,
and security, and security is also, you know, emotional goes into that as well. So
yeah,
we wanted financial security and we wanted emotional security, and I think at the moment the way women's standards are, they're very high, so it's almost like no man is kind of good enough for us anymore. That's really the reason we have right now, because women have bossed up so much and leveled up and elevated so much in society that most men are just not cutting it anymore.
Yeah.
So the list keeps getting higher and higher for women.
Yeah. I mean, I know we sort of touched on this stuff the other night, but I mean, if we just take it down to, say, the financial side of things for a moment, because a lot of guys, you know, they'll talk about money and money being important. I mean, I forget what your answer was, but I mean, would you be happy to date somebody who maybe earned less than you, or would that not really work for you long term, do you think?
No, I mean, I'm very open about this. I would not date someone who earns less than me, just because I know the type of life that I want to have.
Yeah.
And at some point I'm going to have to stop working and be like a full-time mum.
Yeah.
And I know that I'm with a man that can really look after me and provide and make sure that I'm looked after. So for me, dating someone that earns less than me is not the right move to know.
Yeah, fair enough. And you know, and it's a kind of a good place to start, but I think all of this stuff is so nuanced, because on the one hand, like you said, that sort of falls into the provider side of things theoretically, because, you know, the guy he's got money, he can take care of you, he can take care of any of the children. So sometimes guys will look at this stuff and they'll be very black and white. So they'll think, okay, so this guy is kind of a provider, but he's a beta provider because he's just bringing the money to the table. And then there's these guys over here who are the chads, who they don't necessarily have to have money, but women want to have sex with them anyway because they're really hot, basically. But of course, the reality of the matter is that there are a pool of men who kind of have both, right? And really, I suppose those are the women those are the guys that the women are all fighting over, perhaps.
Yes, exactly. That's what we're seeing right now, especially in modern dating. We're seeing that it's sort of like the high value men. Yeah. It's the high value alpha male dominant type high performing males. They're the ones that are getting the women. Because the other men, they have what we call feminine energy. A lot of these men are kind of like, well, what do you bring to the table? And sort of the type of man who asks a woman, what do you bring to the table, is someone who is perhaps not fully in his masculine energy, because a traditional man just sort of knows his role and knows that, you know, he's expected to take care of the woman. So he doesn't even ask the woman, you know, what are you actually bringing to the table? He doesn't want any financial income from her.
Yeah. Is that a question that you found a little bit, I don't want to say triggering, but is that a question that sort of annoyed you? Because I've seen that question around a bit recently on some of these podcasts, you know, saying, well, okay, what do you bring to the table? And it's
an awful question.
Yeah. I mean, from the financial point of view, I see where you're coming from, because I don't think, I think broadly, I agree with you. I think the guy should step up. I'm not saying in a sort of beta way, but I think the guy should have his shit together so that he is able to take care of the woman. Now, if she then chooses to go out and work or do whatever she wants to do, okay, that's fine. But I think part of, and again, I'm probably going to get flamed when people watch this in the comments or whatever, and I'm not saying this in a simpy way, but I do think that part of being the total package is having that financial aspect to it as well. I do think that's important, and I can see why women would want that. But again, you see guys tend to be very black and white, and they sort of think, okay, so what you're saying is basically just attract gold diggers and have money and not have, and really what men need to do, in my view, is kind of have everything, right? You need to get the money side of things sorted out, but you've got to try and get the riz and all the other side of it as well.
Absolutely, because what we have at the moment is we have a lot of men that are kind of, okay, fine, they're high performing, high achieving, you know, they've got the money, but then they haven't got the energy, they haven't got the chat, charisma, they perhaps have weak boundaries. That's very unattractive to women.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so we were talking about this the other night, weren't we? And I mean, when you talk about boundaries, what do you mean specifically?
I think every man needs to have a list of non-negotiables. I think a man has to have strong boundaries, things that he's willing to take and things that he's willing not to take. And if someone was to do something, he would be willing to walk away. And the woman needs to know that. He needs to make that known with his energy, with his words. A woman needs to know that she can't walk all over you. Yeah,
and I would imagine that you would be able to sense that almost from the first date, or probably from the first meeting, right? Is that something that you just get that vibe, like, straight off the bat?
Yeah, of course. And the problem is with some, and this is why I don't really like that sort of term of nice guys, because we do have these nice guys, but women don't want nice guys. Women want good guys. Women want men with very strong boundaries who they feel, okay, I respect, he's able to take care of me, he's able to look after me, but he's also not someone that I can just walk all over. He's not a wet wipe.
Yeah.
He's not a yes man.
It's interesting because in theory you would think the two things went together, because in theory you would think, okay, so the guy who is like like an A-type personality, let's say, somebody who's a go-getter, he's out there, he's on his business, he's making money, etc., etc. You would imagine that dude would also fill the criteria of the other alpha parts of the puzzle, but actually that's not always necessarily the case, particularly now. And Michael Sartain, I saw, was talking about this on a podcast a while back with Rollo, particularly now, because to be honest, you can be a bit of a geek and you can make a shitload of money if you're in tech or something like that. You can actually be a bit of a nerd and then become very successful financially, but it doesn't mean that you've necessarily got the other attributes. And Michael Sartain, and I think this point was correct, said the problem with that is that psychology hasn't caught up yet. Like female psychology is we're still all kind of like in caveman times in our heads. So it's kind of like, yes, you could say, okay, the tech geek who's a bit of a nerd, but he's making a lot of money, he is the alpha male now. But that's not what women viscerally respond to, or it doesn't seem to be.
No, yeah, exactly. Because I mean, what you'll get is the woman might tolerate the geeky guy for a short amount of time.
Yeah,
he is taking care of her because he has got the money. He is, treating her, whatever. So she'll tolerate him for a short amount of time, but then the minute the one who's got money, high value, is alpha, is dominant, does have boundaries, she is a bit fearful from him a tiny bit, she will go for that guy. Because that's really what women want deep down.
It's interesting, like, to say
that's why women, the toxic guys who, okay, they're not the high value men, they don't have a lot of money, but they're toxic, they also get women.
Yeah, exactly.
Because toxic men are very unpredictable.
Yes.
They're not just letting the woman walk all over them, and women find that attractive. That's why they'll pick those men.
Yeah, I mean, so I heard it recently said, maybe you agree with this, maybe not, that one of the problems we got here is that female, like, hypergamy, let's say. So that is to say, if we accept that women like to date equally or ideally, higher than them, or what they perceive to be higher, the problem with that is it's a bit of a movable feast, because on one level that could be money, but then on another level, that could also be like, it could be looks, or it could be like social dominance or something like that. And I think one of the problems is that it's going to be very rare for a guy to have all of those things covered off. So she might get with the super rich guy for a while, but he's a little bit of a, he's a bit of a nerd, whatever. So she's with him for a while because he's got the money. But then, it's the classic thing they always talk about, the pool boy over here who hasn't got the money, but he's jacked and he's got this alpha kind of cockiness about him. Suddenly she's like, oh, that looks good, and then she kind of goes over to that for a bit because that's satisfying a different sort of criteria.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And that's why we have this problem, because, the women, I mean, ideally, if you asked a woman really what she wanted, she'd want the alpha male, the toxic one, but she'd also want him to come with the financial security. But of course, in life, we don't always get everything. So we do end up with the men who maybe have money, but the personality is not quite there. The energy is not quite there.
Yeah. Exactly. So what trumps it in the end, or is it partly about age and stage of life and all that kind of stuff? Because we don't have to go into massive details, but I know you were talking about a relationship that you've come out of fairly recently and stuff like that. And do you think ultimately, it seems to me that ultimately for women it is the emotion. It's what she's feeling when she's with that guy that is the ultimate thing. But I guess at some point people then make a compromise, perhaps. And she's he's okay, he's going to provide me with a good lifestyle, so let's just settle here, right?
Yes. So I think it really does come down to age for a woman.
Yeah.
I think that plays a massive role in her decision making. Because, this whole thing of like women, when they reach a certain age, the value drops a bit, in the sexual market drops, right? That's what we've been told our whole lives. So that is in the back of women's minds when they are making these decisions. And so what happens is a lot of the time, you'll get sort of women who are sort of in their late 20s. They perhaps went through a series of the toxic, dominant, alpha, typical, toxic masculinity type men. And now they're kind of fed up. They're exhausted. They maybe have trauma from the manipulation, from the gaslighting, all kinds of stuff. So now they want to find that nice guy who also has money. And so they will take that guy, although he doesn't have that bite to him.
Yes.
And, he doesn't have that type of energy they really do desire, but they'll take him and they'll tolerate him because now they've reached a certain age where it's like, okay, I need to find, we call it the golden retriever boy. So that's the new term that women use now. They're like, find yourself a golden retriever. Well, a golden retriever is essentially, he's the nice guy, but he's got money and he will do everything he can to make you happy.
So I get that, but the only problem with that is if on some kind of like deeper, like visceral level, she's with the guy because it works, but she's not really feeling it, then doesn't that spell problems down the road? Because at some point she's like, actually, do you know what? And that's, I guess, why a lot of these divorces are perhaps happening, right?
Yes, yeah, because I think, it's definitely it's a human thing. Like we want what we can't have.
True.
And
yeah.
When the thing is with these toxic and dominant men is that sometimes we feel like we can't get them, or when we get them, it feels like a bit of a prize. It feels like we've conquered something. Oh, like I got him. He's finally replying to my text. He's finally making effort. And so this is a human thing. We all want what we can't have, and the problem is with the nice guy is that he just sort of turns up, hands everything to you on the plate. He's not unpredictable. You know what you're getting with him. He's there from the beginning to the end. He's never going to leave. No matter what you do to him, he's not going to leave. He has weak boundaries. And women do not like that.
Yeah. It's so fascinating because I think women are so much more. Female sexuality seems so much more nuanced than male sexuality. I kind of think male sexuality is pretty simple, really. I mean, other people may disagree, but I think it's kind of like, yeah, she's cute, okay, she's good in bed, we can have a nice time together, okay, fine, job done, right? Whereas with women, there's all of these there's such a psychological component to the whole thing.
Yes.
I mean, there is a bit for men as well. Actually, I probably like oversimplified it a little bit there. There's definitely, I mean, for example, like say the girl that or my ex, right? So what happened with her was we started, and what I normally do is it's very casual at the beginning because I'm just trying to figure out the person, and it's like, okay, so what's the vibe here? Do we want this to proceed, or how is she behaving, etc., etc. And we got on really well, and it was clear that there was a really good chemistry there. But at the same time, she wasn't like really trying to push it. I wasn't trying to push it, and she wasn't trying to push it either. So we ended up in basically being in this situation, effectively a situationship for almost a year. And in a way, that actually made me sort of like her more, because I've also been in situations when a woman from the start can be like trying to lock it down and trying to make it into a big thing. And she sort of didn't do that. So it does work from the male perspective as well, I think, a bit. But it seems much more of a female thing that females respond to.
Yeah, because, I mean, that's very interesting what you just said there about, because, you both want essentially applying pressure.
Yeah.
And I guess at times maybe you were thinking, well, how come she's not applying the pressure? How come she's not really trying to move it forward? Because usually the women are like, oh, what are we? What's happening? What's the next?
Yeah.
I think that changed, that shifted your thinking and made you feel as if maybe she does not feel that I'm good enough for commitment. And so it kind of made you feel like, well, you need to prove that, yeah, you are that commitment type. You can be that commitment type. And yeah, I can be that guy for you. So it a little...
Yeah.
It gave you
nudge. For sure. I mean, like, in contrast, like I say, you know, I've had girls where, and this is nothing to do with physical attractiveness, by the way. You know, she could be really, really pretty. But if she's just like, it's like you said before, we kind of want the thing we can't have, don't we? So when and it's a terribly inconvenient part of human nature, but when the girl's kind of a bit bitchy and she's a bit standoffish, I'm not saying my ex was, but like when a girl's like that, that's the one we want. And then there's the one who's being super nice and sending all like heart emojis and stuff. We're like, oh yeah, whatever, you know. But I think women are like that, but on steroids.